looking back at it now, just like just being autistic and not knowing what that is, or that I had it, and just trying to exist already in a place that I don't understand, which is like the real world and how that it operates. So I never felt creatively free to be to exist and kind of interact in the real world. So there was a place in the digital world that I could do that, and that was very much like a binary kind of relationship like that.
Got it. So it was like very much like you had like the reality that was difficult, and you had to play certain games or live by certain rules, and then you had this other reality where you could really kind of be whoever you wanted to be.
Yeah, and the rules were clear in video games, because like, here are the things that you can do, and this is how you can interact. And other than that, have fun. Whereas here, it's much more ambiguous, and that doesn't really work for me.
Yeah. Can you say more about that? Like how, because I know you just mentioned like your autism and dealing with that. And I know that's something you came into awareness of later in your life. Is that like the desire for rules and that kind of main structure, knowing clarity on kind of what the rules of the game are? Is that like a big component for you with regards to your autism and how that shows up for you?
A desire for clarity is a big component of it, right? So not really understanding like social conventions and why they exist, because there's no book of rules on here's how this thing should work. It really kind of hampers my ability to both enjoy and exist in it in a way that's not me like checking back on the basically, all right, I've created these rules after existing in society and how people have interacted. So I have to like constantly reference that and use that to make sure that I'm doing the correct thing that humans do when they interact with each other. And that's kind of, and it's very variable. Like in certain situations you do this, and other ones you do this, and it's not very clear. Whereas in video games, it's often very clear. It's like, here's how you do this thing, and then you go do the thing, and it's like, oh, that's so refreshing.
Yeah. No, I totally relate to that. I think one of the things that's always been a bit of a challenge for me as well, in a different way, where like I grew up super religious and Christian, and so I had my rules, right? I had like the Bible literally that was like, this is what you do, this is what you don't do, this is how you interact. And just like, I'll give the example for dating, for example. Like I grew up in like purity culture, and so like in my church, by the time I was in high school, the vast majority of the high schoolers that I was with were basically like, oh, we're not even going to kiss until we're married. Like it was like that level of like, we're not going to do anything. Wow. And the way that they saw that was like kind of this barrier. It's like, if we make it so that we won't even kiss, then we'll definitely like not have sex, was kind of the thought process. Although there was one couple at least that I know of that like literally just didn't kiss until then, which was still pretty wild to me. So I went from that to
ridiculous.
Yeah. And then going to like, kind of a more secular, a little bit more open, like Christian school, and then getting into the secular world. It was like, when it came to dating, I was just like completely no idea what was going on. Don't know what the rules are. Don't know any of that kind of stuff happens. And it was mind-boggling to me. And it can still be a challenge, because it's like one social setting can feel this way, one social setting can feel that way. And I distinctly remember being working in one restaurant environment where everybody was super flirty. People would hook up a lot. There was a lot of partying and stuff afterwards, and then going to another restaurant. And it was like, I was like kind of bringing in those same social structures and like flirting and that kind of thing. And it was immediately like, don't do this. This is not okay. And I was like, oh, okay, got it. Clearly I'm in a different world now. I don't understand. There was no instructions, but all right, I'll trust that. So yeah, I relate to that.
Yep.
I guess I'm curious with kind of needing those rules and instructions. You, at least from my vantage point, have a really solid group of friends and relationships, and you do go out. And I know that like going out, you've expressed, can be really, really stressful for you. Still, have you found a way to honestly like create your own rules for social interactions that are like, regardless of kind of what the larger construct is, you have like your own set of guidelines that you're going to follow regardless?
Yeah, it's essentially something that I kind of came to relatively recently. I know after getting out of the Navy and like entering society again as an adult, I kind of had to explore a lot of the social interactions and try to figure all that shit out. And eventually I remember like getting to a point where like I'm just not going to figure any of this out, and I'm just going to be who I am in these settings, and it'll figure itself out. And that's basically how I've approached things since then. And it's just like I'm just going to exist as I exist, and the rest of
Mm-hmm.
the people around me can figure it out.
Yeah. I'm curious with that choice, because that's something that honestly I still can struggle with. Like just really being like, okay, cool, I'm going to be like myself and feel okay with that. Was that something that you, I want to say, build like an inner level of like resilience and confidence over time, or is that something like as soon as you made that decision, you were like, oh, cool, cool, it's easy to be Chris, and I'm just going to do that, and it was just kind of a binary decision?
That's a good question. It's not something that's always very easy because it's not because I'm very aware of how, what's a good word for it. It can be very. I can feel like an asshole to a lot of people because of how direct just like being me is, and I'm very aware of that. And it's not something that I feel like I am, or it's not something that I feel like I want to be known as. So it's something that I'm aware of, and it's something that I'm always trying to fine tune a way to be me, and also to exist in just like a social convention that most people would like kind of accept, be like, oh, that's relatively like
Yeah,
normal, and how people exist in this setting. So I'm trying to like fine tune it and figure out what that means for me. But it's very easy for me to be me, and I've never had. That's not true. So I'm not. It's not that I've never had an issue with it. It's just I got to the point where I was so fed up with trying to be all these other things that I just stopped doing those things, and that was a really easy choice.
got it. And that was particular when you're coming out of the Navy.
Yeah, because it was just like I was the Navy. While it was very hard for me in one sense, it was also very easy because there was such a like a ton of structure around
Yeah,
every interaction. But in like when I got out of the Navy and then I was like thrust into the throes of New York, that's totally different and wildly chaotic, and that was just very hard to navigate.
yeah,
And yeah, it got to a point where I got so overwhelmed and burnt out with trying to figure out all the intricacies of it that I just stopped.
yeah, yeah. Got it. And I've never been to New York, but I can imagine
It's a lot.
the chaos of that place compared to the Navy is quite the opposite.